Okay, so you've been digging deep into Wikipedia about bananas.
That's right.
And honestly, after looking at what you found, I'm kind of fascinated. I had no idea there was so much to learn about bananas.
Yeah, it's true. They're one of those things we all know and love, but don't often think twice about.
Exactly. And the first thing that jumped out at me from your research was that bananas are technically berries.
Yeah, that's a classic one.
It's true, though. It kind of surprised me. Did you know that?
Yeah, it always gets people. It's one of those botanical classifications that doesn't quite match up with how we use the word berry in everyday life.
Totally. Like when I think of berries, I think of blueberries or raspberries, not this
Yeah.
giant curved yellow thing.
Exactly. But your source quotes it pretty clearly.
Mm.
An elongated edible fruit, botanically a berry.
Well, there you go. Case closed.
I guess so.
And it's not just the berry thing that's surprising. They don't even grow on trees.
Right.
They're like giant herbs growing from these underground stems called corms.
It's true. They're more closely related to ginger or lilies than they are to actual trees.
So wild. And while we're on the topic of surprising facts, your research also revealed that the top producers of bananas aren't the places I would have guessed at all.
Oh, yeah. Like, what were you thinking?
Well, I don't know. Ecuador comes to mind. Or maybe Costa Rica.
Those are definitely big players in the banana export market.
Right.
But in terms of sheer volume, it's actually India and China that are leading the way.
Really? Wow, I totally would have lost that bet. Why is that?
Well, I think a few things are going on there. First of all, both India and China have incredibly rich and diverse culinary traditions, and bananas play a huge role in many traditional dishes.
That makes sense. I mean, I love a good banana bread. But I'm guessing there are ways of using bananas in those cultures that I can't even imagine.
Oh, absolutely. And secondly, they both have a much wider variety of bananas than we typically see in Western supermarkets.
Oh, so it's not all just about those Cavendish bananas that we're used to.
Exactly. They have a whole range of bananas for different purposes, from dessert to cooking to everything in between. And many of those varieties are consumed locally, which means they don't rely as heavily on the global export market like some other banana-producing nations.
That's really interesting. And it actually kind of relates back to something else you found in your research about the whole dessert banana versus plantain thing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, is that distinction as clear-cut as we tend to think?
It's funny you mention that because your Wikipedia deep dive actually points out that in many parts of the world, particularly Southeast Asia, that line is way blurrier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have varieties that can be eaten raw or cooked sweet or savory. It really challenges those simplified categories we often put food into.
Okay, you've officially blown my mind. Now I need to know everything.
Let's rewind back to the very beginning.
Yeah, good idea. Where did these botanical marvels even come from?
Get ready for a little trip back in time.
Yeah.
We're talking roughly 10,000 to 6,500 years ago.
Wow.
That's when bananas were first domesticated, likely in New Guinea.
New Guinea. So not just any random tropical rainforest, but a specific place with its own whole history.
Exactly. And they originated from two wild species, Musa acuminata and Musa balbisiana.
Those names are a mouthful.
They are. But they represent the foundation of pretty much every banana we eat today.
So bananas played a key role in early farming in Papua New Guinea.
For sure. They provided a reliable source of carbohydrates and nutrients, which helped those early communities thrive and grow.
Wow, so we're not just talking about a tasty snack here. We're talking about a fruit that helped shape human history.
It's true. Their impact goes way beyond just being a delicious food.
So how did they get from New Guinea to seemingly everywhere?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. That's where the Austronesian peoples come into play.
Okay, who are they?
They were this incredible group of seafarers and cultivators who spread bananas throughout the Indo-Pacific during their migrations.
So they brought their banana plants with them as they sailed and settled new lands?
Exactly. They were like horticultural pioneers, bringing essential crops along for the journey. And it wasn't just bananas. They spread culture, language, and knowledge across vast distances.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. It's amazing to think about the ripple effects, all stemming from something as seemingly simple as a banana plant.
It really is.
Yeah.
And those ripples didn't stop there. Bananas eventually made their way to India, potentially as far back as the Indus Valley Civilization, and then spread westward, becoming intertwined with the Arab agricultural revolution and eventually reaching Africa.
Wow, bananas have been on quite the journey.
They really have. It's a global story spanning thousands of years and countless cultures.
It makes me wonder how scientists even begin to unravel all that and keep track of all the different species and varieties.
Yeah, it's a botanical puzzle for sure.
So how do they do it?
Well, early attempts at classifying bananas were a bit basic. Let's just say that.
Oh, do tell.
All right, so back in the 18th century, Carl Linnaeus, the father of taxonomy, decided to classify bananas based solely on how they were used.
Okay, so how'd that work?
He decided there were two types: dessert bananas, which he dubbed Musa sapientum, meaning wise Musa,
Okay.
and then cooking bananas, which he called Musa paradisiaca, or paradisical Musa.
It does seem a tad subjective.
Just a bit, like judging a banana by its peel.
Exactly. And probably not the most scientific approach.
You've got that right. It definitely wouldn't hold up today with all the genetic tools we have at our disposal.
Yeah.
But hey, you got to start somewhere, right?
True that. So how did we go from Linnaeus's two-banana system to a more nuanced understanding?
Well, a lot of credit goes to the work of Ernest Cheeseman in the 1940s.
Okay, tell me about him.
So Cheeseman was a botanist who really dug deep into banana genetics, and his research was groundbreaking. He was the one who discovered the two wild ancestors of our beloved bananas, Musa acuminata and Musa belbisiana, remember?
Right.
And that discovery completely revolutionized our understanding of where bananas came from and how they evolved.
So Cheeseman to the rescue.
You could say that his work laid the foundation for all the genetic studies that came after.
But I imagine unraveling the genetic complexities of bananas is still a challenge even today.
Oh, absolutely. Bananas have some very unusual genetic quirks that make them fascinating to study.
Oh, genetic quirks. Okay, I'm listening. What makes them so unique?
Well, for one thing, their chloroplast and mitochondrial DNA are inherited in a very unusual way.
Hold on, wait. Chloroplast and mitochondrial DNA? Now you're just using big words to sound smart?
Okay, fair enough. Those are just the parts of a plant cell that are responsible for things like photosynthesis and energy production.
Yeah.
And usually in most plants, those types of DNA are inherited from the mother.
Makes sense.
But bananas decided to mix things up a bit. They get their chloroplast DNA from their mom, like normal, but their mitochondrial DNA, that comes from their dad.
So they're like rebels of the plant world.
You could say that. It's a pattern that's pretty rare, and it makes tracing their lineage a bit more complicated.
Wow. They really do keep things interesting.
They certainly do.
Yeah.
But this unusual inheritance pattern actually plays a role in one of the biggest challenges facing bananas today.
Oh, really? Okay, now I have to know more. What are you talking about?
Well, the banana variety that dominates the global market today, the one we see in every grocery store, is facing a serious threat.
You're killing me here. Tell me more.
It's all about the Cavendish banana. You know those
Yeah,
ones?
the classic ones we see everywhere.
Exactly. Those make up like the vast majority of the global banana market. But here's the thing. The Cavendish is facing a serious threat.
Okay, now you really have my attention. What kind of threat?
Disease.
Disease. Like, what are we talking about here?
Well, it's not the first time a popular banana variety has faced this kind of thing. Remember the Gros Michel banana?
Gros Michel. I feel like I've heard of that, but I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah. It was the dominant banana variety before the Cavendish rose to fame.
Okay.
But get this. The Gros Michel was practically wiped out by a disease called Panama disease. It's caused by a fungus in the soil.
Wow, so what happened? How did we end up with Cavendish bananas if this disease was so bad?
Well, it turns out the Cavendish is resistant to that particular strain of Panama disease. So it was able to kind of step in and fill the void when the Gros Michel went down.
So it was like the understudy that suddenly got called up to the big leagues.
Exactly. The Cavendish saved the day, or at least postponed the crisis. But here's where it gets tricky.
Oh, what's the catch?
A new strain of Panama disease has emerged called Tropical Race 4, or DR4 for short.
And I'm guessing this TR4 is bad news for the Cavendish.
You guessed it. This new strain, the Cavendish, has no defense against it.
Oh no, that sounds really serious. How worried should we be?
It's definitely a concern. The banana industry globally is heavily reliant on this one variety, the Cavendish. It's like putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right, and we know how that usually ends up.
Exactly. And this is a prime example of why monoculture, which is the practice of relying on a single variety, can be risky.
So the very thing that made the Cavendish so successful, its dominance in the market, could also be its downfall.
Exactly. If TR4 were to spread unchecked, it could be devastating. Crop failures, skyrocketing prices, even shortages.
That would be a nightmare. Not just for banana lovers like myself, but for the entire global banana trade.
Absolutely. It would impact farmers, distributors, retailers, everyone along the supply chain.
So what can be done about it? Is there any hope?
Well, scientists are working on it. They're trying to develop disease-resistant varieties, but it's a tough challenge.
I bet. And I'm guessing those genetic quirks we talked about earlier are part of the problem.
Bingo. Traditional breeding methods, which is how we usually develop new varieties, are much harder with bananas
Yeah.
because of how they inherit their DNA.
So what are scientists doing instead?
They're exploring a lot of different avenues. They're
Oh.
looking at genetic modification techniques, trying to find naturally resistant varieties in the wild. It's a real race against time to find a solution.
This is fascinating. It really shows how complex and interconnected the world of bananas is. Who knew?
Right. And speaking of interconnectedness, did you know that bananas have a ton of uses beyond just eating them?
Oh, yeah.
Like
What
what?
not?
Oh, yeah. Like
I
what?
mean, for starters, almost every single part of the banana plant is used for something.
Really? I
Yeah.
know I've seen people using banana leaves as plates before.
Oh, yeah. That's super common, especially in Southeast Asia.
Right. It's very eco-friendly.
Exactly. Plus, it looks cool.
It does. What about the other parts, though? Like, what else can you do with a banana plant?
Well, for one thing, banana flowers are edible.
What? You're kidding? Nope. Totally serious. They're used in a bunch of different cuisines.
What do they taste like, though?
They've got a slightly bitter flavor, kind of like artichoke hearts.
Interesting. I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, and they can be eaten raw or cooked.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
And get this, even the banana trunk is used in some cultures.
Wait, seriously? The trunk, what do they do with it?
It's not as common, but it's used in some Southeast Asian cuisines, like added to soups and stews for texture and flavor.
This is incredible. I had no idea bananas were so versatile.
Oh yeah, and we haven't even touched on their cultural significance. They pop up everywhere, from ancient myths to modern art.
Okay, now I need details. You can't just drop a bombshell like that and not elaborate.
Well, for instance, did you know that the famous Japanese poet Matsuo Basho was actually named after a banana plant?
No way. Seriously. That's amazing. How'd that happen?
So the story goes that one of his students gifted him a banana plant, and it grew so well in his garden that people started calling him Basho, which means banana plant in Japanese.
Wow, what a legacy.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't want to be known for their thriving banana plant?
Right. And it eventually became his pen name.
That's awesome.
Mm.
I feel like most people probably don't associate bananas with poetry, though.
That's fair. But they do have their place in the music world, too. Ever heard of the song, Yes, We Have No Bananas?
Of course. Who hasn't? It's a classic.
Exactly. It's one of those tunes that gets stuck in your head forever.
Totally. But I have to say, I think my favorite pop culture banana reference has to be the classic banana peel slip.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
The ultimate slapstick comedy staple.
It never gets old.
Never gets old. But the banana has also found its way into some more highbrow art forms as well.
Really? Like what?
Well, there's Andy Warhol's famous banana print, for example.
Right.
It became a pop art icon.
Iconic indeed. And then on a slightly more controversial note, there's Maurizio Catalan's Comedian,
Ah, yeah, the banana taped to the wall.
the one and only.
Yeah,
It sparked quite the debate in the art world.
it sure did. Which just goes to show that even something as simple as a banana can be incredibly thought-provoking.
This whole deep dive has honestly been eye-opening. I had no idea there was so much to learn about bananas.
I told you they were fascinating.
You weren't kidding. So the next time I'm at the grocery store staring at a bunch of bananas, I'm going to have a whole new appreciation for them.
You and me both. And hopefully our listeners will too.
That's right. So to everyone listening, the next time you pick up a banana, take a moment to think about the journey it took to get there. It's a journey that spans continents and cultures, and it's a story that's still being written today.
Well said. Until next time, everyone, happy peeling up.